The prime resonator, Xyler, felt the chamber's ambient frequency shift from solemnity to a sharp, grating chord of fear. The great conclave of the Cathar Imperium did not convene in a hall of matter, but in a nexus of pure thought and energy, a confluence where the minds of the Elder Council flowed together as one. Their forms, elegant constructs of crystalline light and woven energy, pulsed with a discordant rhythm that betrayed the ancient calm of their species. Before them, suspended in the non-space at the heart of the conclave, hung a hologram, a swirling, chaotic representation of a force that defied every principle of their existence. It was a cancer spreading through the void, a maelstrom of crude matter and violent energy that moved with a terrifying, mindless purpose. They called it the anomaly. They called it the scourge. But in the most secret, trembling frequencies of their thoughts, they called it by a name that felt like a sacrilege to utter. Vorlag, shield warden of the Outer Rim, his own form a sharp, angular lattice of brilliant crimson light, projected his thoughts with the force of a physical blow. His resonance was one of anger, of certainty born from terror. It continues its advance unchecked. Another star system has been consumed, not conquered, not occupied, consumed. Its resources stripped, its worlds fractured, its star choked with the particulate filth of its industry. We have observed it for cycles, debated its nature, and we are no closer to understanding its motive because it has none. It is a force of cosmic entropy given a horrifying, directed will. It is a war machine that shouldn't exist, and yet it moves towards us unstoppable. The silence that followed was heavier than the gravity of a collapsed star. Vorlag's words were not new, but the data supporting them was fresh, raw, and terrifying. The hologram shifted, showing the path of the anomaly. It was not the elegant, flowing trajectory of a Cathar fleet, which rode the currents of spacetime like a leaf on the wind. This path was a series of brutal, straight lines, punctuated by violent explosions of energy as the invaders tore holes in reality to cross the void. It was the movement of a battering ram, not a scalpel. They moved with a logic that was anathema to the Cathar's philosophy of confluence, the belief that the universe was a song, and to live was to find one's place in its harmony. This anomaly was not a note in the song. It was a screech of pure static, threatening to overwhelm the entire composition. Xyler, whose own form was a gentle, spiraling nebula of deep violet and silver, let the discordant energies of the conclave wash over him without altering his own calm frequency. He had guided the Imperium for millennia, his wisdom a steady anchor in the cosmic tides. But this was different. The Cathar had faced threats before. The void worms of the Cygnus Rift, the psychic plague of the Forgotten Empire, all had been challenges, but they had been understandable. They operated on principles, however alien, that could be discerned, predicted, and countered. This anomaly, this force that called itself humanity, operated on no principles Xyler could recognize, save for a relentless, chaotic expansion. Your assessment is, as always, direct, Shield Warden, Xyler projected, his thoughts a soothing balm against the chamber's anxiety. But you speak of a war machine. A machine is a tool. It has a creator, a purpose. To act without first understanding that purpose is to risk a miscalculation from which we may never recover. What do we truly know of these humans? A junior archivist, her form a pale, shimmering blue, pulsed nervously before daring to project. Prime Resonator, our deep-range scans and psychic resonance probes have yielded little. Their communications are a chaotic blend of structured data and unstructured emotional broadcasts, a cacophony. Their technology is brutish. They propel their vessels by containing and directing continuous, violent explosions. Their weapons hurl inert matter at relativistic speeds. It is primitive yet devastatingly effective. There is no elegance, no harmony. They do not bend the laws of physics to their will, they beat them into submission. As for their biology, what little we can glean suggests they are fragile, soft-bodied creatures of water and carbon, existing in a state of constant internal decay. It is a contradiction. How can such frail beings command such a destructive engine? Vorlag's crimson light sharpened. The frailty of the pilot does not diminish the power of the weapon. Perhaps they are slaves to their own creation. Perhaps the machine itself is the intelligence, and the biologicals are merely the fuel it consumes to propagate. It matters not. We have attempted to communicate. We have sent greetings in the universal language of mathematics. We have broadcasted harmonics of peace. The only response was a tightening of their energy screens and erection of their weapon arrays. They are deaf to reason, blind to philosophy. They are a plague, and the only sane response to a plague is its utter eradication. The Shield Warden's thoughts painted a grim picture for the conclave, a preemptive strike. The Cathar fleet, the stellar chorus, would converge at the edge of human-claimed space. They would generate a purifying resonance, a wave of focused energy that would unravel the very bonds of matter, silencing the human cacophony forever. It would be a regrettable but necessary act of cosmic hygiene. Several members of the conclave pulsed in agreement, their fear making Vorlag's simple, violent solution seem appealing. But Xyler resisted. His long existence had taught him one immutable truth: the universe was always more complex than it appeared. Simplicity was often the cloak of profound ignorance. To destroy something we do not understand is to admit that our own wisdom has failed. It is an act of fear, not strength. These humans, their very existence is a paradox that our logic cannot resolve. They are ephemeral, yet their works seem to strive for permanence. They are chaotic, yet their expansion is relentlessly methodical. They are loud, yet their core worlds are strangely, psychically quiet, as if shielded by a will we cannot penetrate. Before we commit to an act that will echo through eternity, we must make one final attempt to solve this paradox. Not with a broadcast, but with a presence. We will send a delegation. The chamber erupted in a flurry of dissonant protests. A delegation, to approach the maw of the beast. It was suicide. It was an invitation for contamination. Vorlag's resonance was a furious spike. A delegation? What will you send, Prime Resonator? Philosophers to debate with a tidal wave, poets to serenade a supernova. They will be annihilated before they can even state their purpose. We will not send philosophers or poets, Xyler replied, his own energy swelling, blanketing the chamber in an unyielding, ancient calm that no one dared challenge. We will send our most astute observers, our most courageous diplomats. We will send them to the coordinates we have designated, a system on the very fringe of their advance. We will broadcast a simple message. We are here. We wish to understand. We will give them one cycle to respond. If they attack, if they ignore us, then you will have your purifying resonance, Shield Warden. But if they answer, if they show even a flicker of something beyond mindless consumption, then we have a duty to see it. The Cathar Imperium has been a beacon of reason for 1,000,000 years. It will not be fear that extinguishes our light. The Prime Resonator's will was absolute. The conclave subsided into a grudging, fearful silence. The decision was made. A small, swift flotilla of Cathar vessels, their crystalline hulls shimmering like captured starlight, detached from the main fleet. They were not warships, but vessels of observation and diplomacy, their primary systems dedicated to powerful sensors and communication arrays. They moved with the silent grace that was their way, their energy signatures a soft, harmonious hum in the void. Their destination was a barren, lifeless system named only by a string of human numerical identifiers, TRAPPIST-1. It was here, in the cold, empty space between worlds, that the Cathar would finally come face to face with the war machine that shouldn't exist, and pray that they found a mind within the monster. The fate of two civilizations hung on a single, unanswered question: what truly was humanity? The journey was a long, silent vigil. The Cathar diplomats, led by an elder named Lyra, whose form was a complex weave of gold and white light, spent the time in deep meditation, preparing themselves for any eventuality. They reviewed every scrap of data on the humans, every garbled transmission, every long-range scan of their destructive wake. They tried to build a psychological profile, a philosophical model, but every attempt failed. Human behavior was a set of disconnected data points, a scatterplot with no discernible curve. They acted with the aggression of predators, yet their internal communications, when snippets could be deciphered, spoke of art, of love, of hope, concepts utterly at odds with the brutal reality of their expansion. As they neared the designated coordinates, the flotilla's sensors began to scream, not with the approach of a massive fleet, as they had feared, but with the sheer energetic noise emanating from the system. It was a chaotic storm of radiation, radio waves, and gravimetric distortions. To the Cathar's refined senses, it was the auditory equivalent of 1 billion voices shouting at once in 1 billion different languages. It was the background radiation of human civilization, the unfiltered roar of their technology and their unshielded thoughts. Lyra felt her own energy field ripple with instinctual revulsion. This was the sound of chaos. His was the sound of a fevered, insane mind. How could reason exist in such a maelstrom? They arrived at the designated meeting point, a Lagrange point between a gas giant and its moon, and waited. They broadcast Xyler's message on a single, pure frequency, a clear, piercing note of mathematics and intent that cut through the background noise. We are here. We wish to understand. Then they powered down all non-essential systems, becoming a quiet, patient cluster of jewels in the darkness, waiting for the monster to show itself. They expected a fleet to tear its way out of hyperspace. They expected a wave of relativistic projectiles. They expected an immediate, violent response. They received none of it. For a long, tense period, there was only the oppressive, chaotic silence. The background noise of the human sphere of influence seemed to dip to quiet, as if a great beast were holding its breath. The Cathar waited, their very forms shimmering with tension. Then a single, focused energy signature resolved from the chaos. It was small, impossibly small. A single vessel, moving with none of the brutal force they had come to expect. It did not tear a rift in space-time. It seemed to glide through it, using a drive that produced a strange, almost musical resonance, though one far more complex and layered than their own. It was a dissonant chord, but a chord nonetheless, not just static. The human ship was a thing of profound ugliness to Cathar aesthetics. It was asymmetrical, a patchwork of modules and antennae, its hull a dull, non-reflective gray. It did not shimmer or sing with energy. It absorbed the light, a black hole in the shape of a vessel. It came to a halt a respectful distance away, its weapon ports visibly closed, its energy shields lowered to a mere navigational hum. There was no threat display, no posturing. It simply was. A communication channel opened. Not the chaotic blast of noise they anticipated, but a tight, controlled beam of modulated energy. It was a carrier wave, and on it was a voice. Not a psychic projection, but an auditory signal translated into a pattern the Cathar could interpret. The voice was calm, its cadence measured, its frequency low and steady. It was, Lyra realized with a profound sense of dislocation, the most ordered, rational thing they had yet encountered from this species. "This is Ambassador Evelyn Reed of the Terran Confederacy. We received your message. We are here to listen." The words, so simple, so direct, shattered every preconceived notion the Cathar delegation held. There was no monstrous roar, no declaration of war, just a name, a title, and an invitation. Lyra, after a moment of stunned silence in which she had to consciously regulate her own energy field, responded in kind, her thoughts shaped into the same carrier wave. "I am Lyra of the Cathar Imperium. We accept your invitation. We wish to understand your purpose. Your advance through this sector of the galaxy has been aggressive. We perceived it as the action of a hostile, expansionist force." There was a pause on the human end, long enough for Lyra to wonder if she had misspoken, if her directness had been perceived as an accusation. Then Ambassador Reed's voice returned, tinged with a resonance the Cathar's emotional sensors struggled to define. It was not anger, not fear. It was weary, a deep, ancient weariness. "Aggressive, yes. From your perspective, I can see how it would appear that way. Our existence is energetic. We have found that the universe is not a hospitable place for beings like us. To stand still is to perish. We do not expand for conquest, Lyra of the Cathar. We expand to survive." The concept was alien to them. The Cathar had existed in their cluster for eons, in perfect balance with their environment. The universe to them was a garden, and they were its patient caretakers. The idea that existence itself was a struggle, a constant battle against annihilation, was a philosophy born of unimaginable trauma. "Survival," Lyra projected back. "Your methods seem disproportionate for mere survival. You shatter worlds, you extinguish stars." "We do not extinguish stars," the human voice replied, a subtle sharpness entering its tone for the first time. "We build shrouds to capture their energy because our needs are great. We dismantle barren worlds for the raw materials to build habitats because we are many. We do not act out of malice, we act out of necessity. Perhaps a visual aid would be more effective. My vessel is unarmed. My crew is minimal. I invite you aboard to share data, to show you our history. To show you why we are what we are. It is a risk for both of us, but understanding is never without risk." Aboard the Cathar vessel, a silent, frantic debate ensued. To board the human ship was to place themselves entirely at their mercy, to expose themselves to their chaotic energies, their alien biology. But to refuse was to fail in their mission. Xyler's woe. RDS echoed in Lyra's mind. To destroy something we do not understand is to admit that our own wisdom has failed. Lyra made the decision. Her golden-white form pulsed with resolve. "We accept." The boarding process was a marvel of clashing philosophies. The Cathar, beings of energy, could have simply transmitted themselves across the void. The humans extended a physical docking tube, a primitive but functional solution. 3 of the Cathar delegation, including Lyra, stabilized their energy forms into a state dense enough to interact with matter and glided through the airlock. The atmosphere inside the human ship was a thick, humid mix of gases, warm and filled with the scent of organic processes. It felt like stepping into a swamp, a primal soup of life that was both fascinating and repulsive. The ship's interior was not the sterile, metallic environment of a war machine. The walls were lined with panels that cycled through images of stunning, alien landscapes, a world of vast blue oceans, green forests, and clouds of white water vapor. Strange, leafy organisms grew in illuminated alcoves, their presence filling the recycled air with a fresh, living scent. It was not a warship, it was an ark. Ambassador Evelyn Reed was waiting for them in a large, circular chamber. She was a frail creature, just as the scans had suggested. A bipedal column of soft tissue and bone, encased in a simple, dark blue uniform. Her face was a canvas of soft planes and expressive muscles. Her eyes, two dark, liquid orbs, held an intelligence that was both piercing and deeply empathetic. She was alone. She made a gesture of peace, an opening of her five-fingered hands, a sign of being unarmed that was viscerally understandable even to the Cathar. "Welcome aboard the Stellina Maris," she said, her voice the same calm resonance from the transmission. "It means Star of the Sea, a poetic name from our homeworld's history. Please make yourselves comfortable if that concept is applicable to you." Lyra and her companions hovered in the center of the room, their forms casting a gentle, shimmering light. "Ambassador, you offered us understanding. We are here to receive it." Reed nodded, her expression somber. She gestured to the center of the room where a holographic projector whirred to life. "I will not show you our technology or our military strength. Vorlag of your conclave is already convinced of that. I will show you our soul. I will show you the crucible that forged us." The hologram that flickered into existence was not of star charts or battle plans. It was a world, a beautiful blue and white marble hanging in the blackness, Earth. "This was our cradle," Reed began, her voice a soft narration over the images. "It was a paradise, but it was also a killer. It taught us our first and most important lesson. The universe is not benign. It is a machine of exquisite, impartial cruelty." The images shifted. Lyra watched, mesmerized and horrified, as the history of this fragile species unfolded. She saw ice ages that crushed continents, volcanoes that blackened the sky, asteroids that struck with the force of 1,000 suns, wiping the slate of life clean. She saw the evolution of the humans, their struggle from primate ancestors, their desperate, clawing ascent to consciousness. But with consciousness came a new kind of horror. She saw them turn on each other. She saw fire and swords, mushroom clouds and cities of bone. She saw plagues that turned their bodies against them, ideologies that turned their minds against each other. It was a litany of suffering, a symphony of self-destruction that made the Cathar's own placid history seem like a dream. "We are a species born of trauma," Reed said, her voice thick with an emotion Lyra's sensors identified as grief. "Every step forward we have ever taken has been on the ashes of a catastrophic failure. We learned to build shelters because the cold killed us. We learned medicine because disease ravaged us. We learned to cooperate because our own wars threatened to annihilate us. We are not naturally harmonious. We are naturally chaotic, competitive, and self-destructive. Every structure of our society, every law, every piece of art, is a desperate attempt to build a dam against the darkness of our own nature and the indifference of the cosmos." The hologram shifted again, moving into space. Lyra saw their first clumsy rockets, their first tentative steps onto their own moon. She saw them spread through their solar system, not with the graceful ease of the Cathar, but with a grim, dogged determination, fighting for every inch. They built their habitats in the cold vacuum, in the crushing gravity, on worlds that were actively hostile to their biology. It was a constant, desperate war against their environment. "When we finally reached the stars," Reed continued, "we found nothing. No friendly hand, no guiding intelligence, just silence, an empty galaxy teeming with resources but RLY devoid of life that had crossed the threshold of intelligence. We were alone, and we were afraid. Our past had taught us that any unknown variable is a potential threat, and our history had taught us that stagnation is death. So we did the only thing we knew how to do. We began to build. We began to secure our future." The hologram now showed what the Cathar had only seen from a distance, but this time with context. A Dyson swarm being constructed not to choke a star, but to power a civilization of trillions, to provide the energy needed to sustain life on countless artificial worlds. A planet being dismantled not out of malice, but because it was a dead rock, and its minerals could be used to build ships that would carry families to new homes, to new chances at life. The war machine wasn't a fleet of warships. It was their entire civilization. It was the collective, frantic, desperate effort of a species that had looked into the abyss and decided that the only response was to build a fortress of light and life so vast that the darkness could never swallow it whole. The chaos the Cathar had perceived was not the chaos of mindless destruction. It was the chaos of a construction site. The chaotic noise was not the sound of insanity. It was the sound of a trillion souls working, living, striving, and shouting their existence into a silent universe that did not seem to care if they lived or died. "You see us as a war machine," Reed said, her gaze meeting Lyra's. "And in a way you are right, we are at war, but our enemy is not the Cathar, it is not any living thing. Our enemy is the silence, our enemy is entropy. Our enemy is the final, cold dark that awaits all things. We fight against the heat death of the universe itself, with every child born, with every ship launched, with every world we make livable. It is a war we know we will one day lose, but we will not lose it today. We will not lose it standing still. Your philosophy is confluence, the search for harmony. Our philosophy is defiance. We see the cosmic song and we choose to add our own verse, loud and dissonant and full of fury and hope, before the final note fades to nothing." Lyra felt her very being, her stable energy form, tremble. The Cathar had never conceived of such a thing. They had always assumed that intelligent life, true intelligence, would inevitably seek harmony because it was the most logical, most efficient state of being. But here were the humans, a species that had found its strength not in harmony but in struggle. Their chaos was not a flaw, it was their greatest weapon. Their aggression was not aimed at others but at oblivion itself. They were not a cancer. They were a scar, a furious, messy, beautiful scar on the smooth face of entropy. The war machine that shouldn't exist was the ultimate survival machine. We did not know," Lyra projected, her thoughts slow, her energy filled a whirl of confusion and dawning, terrifying respect. "Our perception was limited. We saw only the effect, not the cause. The form of your expansion is that of a conquest." "Form is not function," Reed replied softly. "We have never destroyed a world that harbored life. We have never attacked a species that did not attack us first. Our prime directive is not to conquer, but to endure. We have been so focused on our own struggle, we did not consider how our methods would appear to a species such as yours, a species that has known peace for so long. For that, I offer my people's deepest apologies. We were loud in a library, and we did not realize anyone else was trying to read." The sheer humility of the statement, coming from a being who represented a power that could shatter the Cathar Imperium if it so chose, was the final piece of the puzzle. The humans were not monsters. They were terrifying. They were powerful. They were loud and chaotic and moved with a brutal pragmatism that chilled Lyra to her core. But they were not monsters. They were people. A people forged in a fire the Cathar could barely comprehend. A people who carried the weight of 1 billion years of struggle in their collective soul. Lyra turned to her companions. Their forms, too, were muted, their confident energy patterns subdued into something more reflective. She knew what she had to do. "Ambassador Reed," she projected, her tone now one of formal galactic diplomacy. "Your explanation has been enlightening. It has altered the very foundation of our understanding. We must return to our conclave. We must share what we have learned." "Of course," Reed said with a simple nod. "The channel will remain open. Whatever your people decide, we will be waiting. We have always been better at making flood walls than bridges. We would like to learn how to build a bridge." As the Cathar delegation returned to their vessel, the universe felt different. The chaotic noise of human space no longer sounded like a threat. It sounded like a heartbeat, a loud, frantic, powerful beat in a universe that had seemed, until now, to be drifting into a long, quiet sleep. The report Lyra sent back to the conclave was not a data packet. It was a testament. It was the story of humanity in all its ugly, brutal, and breathtaking glory. It was a plea for understanding, a warning against the arrogance of their own serene philosophy. Back in the nexus of the Cathar Imperium, Lyra's report spread like a wave of pure, unadulterated shock. The memories, the emotions, the raw historical data from Ambassador Reed's presentation washed over the Elder Council. The crimson light of Vorlag, the Shield Warden, flickered and dimmed, his aggressive certainty replaced by a stunned, horrified silence. The images of humanity's self-inflicted wounds, of their desperate struggle against a hostile cosmos, were a philosophical shockwave that cracked the very foundations of Cathar thought. They had judged a species by the noise of its tools, without ever considering the nature of the hands that wielded them. Xyler, the prime resonator, absorbed the information with a deep, resonant hum of profound revelation. He saw it now, the pattern he had sensed but could not define. It was not a pattern of conquest. It was a pattern of survival, executed on a scale so grand and with such ferocious intensity that it mimicked the universe's most destructive forces. Humanity did not move like a scalpel because they were not trying to cut. They moved like a shield, a vast, ever-expanding shield against the void. And the Cathar had been about to mistake that shield for a sword. "The shield warden is silent," Xyler projected into the chamber, his tone not accusatory but gentle. "Vorlag, your thoughts." Vorlag's crimson form pulsed weakly. I have seen their history. I have felt their pain. The resonance of their past is a scream that will echo in my consciousness for eternity. They are what we would have become had our cradle world been a place of torment instead of a garden. They are a mirror, a dark, fractured mirror of what a people can become when stripped of all comfort, all harmony, all peace. To call them a war machine is correct, but we aimed our condemnation at the wrong enemy. They are not at war with us. His resonance sank to a frequency of deep shame. They are at war with everything else. The vote of the conclave was a formality. The purifying resonance was cancelled, its targeting matrices wiped clean. In its place, a new directive was issued, a directive of open communication, of diplomatic exchange, of cautious, hesitant friendship. The stellar chorus, the great Cathar fleet, was ordered to stand down, its purpose shifting from defense to observation, and then slowly to escort. The great war that had seemed inevitable, the clash of two galactic titans, dissolved not with a bang, but with a quiet, profound moment of mutual understanding. The first bridge was built. Communication flowed freely between the two powers. The Cathar, with their mastery of energy and spacetime, taught the humans a new elegance, a way to achieve their goals with less brute force, less chaotic waste. They showed humanity how to make their drives sing instead of scream, how to draw power from stars without shrouding them in darkness. In return, humanity gave the Cathar a gift they did not know they needed, a purpose beyond mere existence. The humans, with their boundless, defiant energy, their relentless drive to build and explore and discover, reignited a spark in the ancient, placid soul of the Imperium. They reminded the Cathar that the universe was not just a song to be listened to, but an epic poem waiting to be written. Together they began to explore. Joint expeditions, crewed by the soft, resilient bodies of humans and the shimmering, energetic forms of the Cathar, pushed out into the unknown frontiers of the galaxy. It was on one such mission, in a vessel that was a perfect fusion of their two technologies, the enduring harmony, that the universe decided to reveal its true nature. They were charting the Uit clouds of a long-dead star system, a place of absolute cold and silence at the very edge of the galactic disk. Their goal was to use a new, combined sensor suite, one that paired human chaotic data analysis with Cathar resonance sensitivity, to map the deep structure of spacetime in a way neither could alone. Ambassador Reed, now older, her hair streaked with gray but her eyes still bright with fierce intelligence, stood on the bridge beside a projection of Lyra, their friendship having become a cornerstone of the new alliance. The ship's main viewscreen showed nothing but the void, a blackness more profound than any either had witnessed before. "The sensors are performing beyond all projections," a human science officer reported, his voice filled with awe. "The Cathar resonance tuners are filtering out the quantum noise, and our predictive algorithms are finding patterns, faint residual signatures, echoes." In the dark, Lyra's form pulsed with curiosity. Echoes of what? The birth of the star? Supernova remnants? "No," the officer said, his brow furrowed in concentration. "These are older, much older. They seem to be embedded in the cosmic microwave background radiation itself, like scars on the fabric of reality from before the galaxy was even formed." A hush fell over the bridge. What he was suggesting was impossible. The CMBR was the baby picture of the universe, the most ancient light. It was supposed to be almost perfectly uniform, its slight variations a map of the seeds of cosmic structure. It was not supposed to have scars. "Put it on the main screen," Reed commanded, her voice steady. "Filter everything else out, show us only the anomaly." The view of the void was replaced by a complex, swirling map of faint energy differentials. To the untrained eye, it was static, but to the combined analytical power of the Cathar and human systems, it was a message. It was a pattern of such vastness that it stretched across 1 billion light-years of space, a message written in the faint temperature variations of the universe's first light. It was not a communication. It was a fossil, the fossil of a scream. The pattern resolved into a horrifyingly clear sequence. It showed a galaxy, then two, then a cluster of them, filled with the energetic signatures of what could only be intelligent, star-spanning life. And then it showed something else. A region of nothing, not empty space, but an absence. A patch of absolute total null entropy that moved. It was not a black hole, not a void. It was a wave of cessation. It moved from one galaxy to the next, and wherever it passed, the energetic signatures of life, of stars, of matter itself, simply vanished, leaving behind only the faintest, smoothest patch of background radiation, as if that region of space had been wiped clean, reset to its factory settings. What are we looking at? A Cathar observer projected, his form flickering with a terror that was new to his species. Reed stared at the screen, her face pale, her mind racing through the implications. The silence they had found in the galaxy wasn't natural. The great filter, the theoretical barrier that prevented civilizations from becoming galactic, wasn't a technological hurdle or a tendency for self-destruction. Humanity had been wrong. They were not alone because life was rare. They were alone because something was harvesting it. "It's a warning," Reed whispered, the words falling like stones into the silent bridge. "Left by someone something long ago. A civilization so advanced they could write on the canvas of creation itself. They didn't leave a message of hope. They left a crime scene report, a report billions of years old." The simulation on the screen continued its horrifying loop. The wave of null entropy, the devourer, consumed galaxy cluster after galaxy cluster, a tireless, silent plague upon existence. There was no battle, no resistance, just erasure. Lyra's form drifted closer to Reed, her golden light a stark contrast to the human's pale face. Her people had feared humanity, the unstoppable war machine that shouldn't exist. They had been so preoccupied with their own narrow, philosophical definition of order that they had failed to see the larger picture. Humanity wasn't a perversion of life's purpose. It was its most extreme, most logical expression in a universe that contained this. The defiant, chaotic, relentless drive to survive, to build, to fight against the dying of the light. It wasn't a choice. It was an imperative. It was the only possible sane response to a cosmos that contained such a predator. "The war machine that shouldn't exist," Lyra projected, her thought voice filled with a new, chilling understanding. "We were wrong about what it was, but we were not wrong that it was necessary. Your people, you have been preparing for this war your entire existence without even knowing your enemy's name." Reed looked away from the ancient horror on the screen and met Lyra's projected gaze. The fear was there, cold and deep in her human eyes, but beneath it something else burned, something the Cathar were only just beginning to comprehend. It was the same fire that had driven a species of frail, soft-bodied primates out of the mud and into the stars. It was the stubborn, irrational, and utterly magnificent defiance that was the soul of humanity. "Well," Ambassador Reed said, her voice quiet but as solid as bedrock, "it has a name now, and it's heading our way." On the bridge of the enduring harmony, silence reigned. But it was no longer the empty, lonely silence of the void. It was the charged, focused silence of a watchtower of two vastly different peoples, one of harmony and one of chaos, staring together into a darkness far deeper than they had ever imagined and preparing to add their verse to the song. It would be a verse of war. A true war this time, a war against the silence itself, and for the first time in their long history the Cathar understood. To win, they would have to learn to scream.